scheduled, but I have Mr. Tim Cups with ReMAX Advantage, and we were actually talking a bit offline here just a minute ago. I'm going to pull him in. We're going to start talking about the summer is here, right? Obviously, end of Q2 2025, and what a fun market that we've had this first half of the year. So lots to talk about. I wanted to do some market recaps, some catch up, some discussions on current market strategies, best practices, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of fun stuff to chat about. Let me bring Tim in here. Give me just uno momento. 1 second, guys. Mr. Cups, there you are. We were having such a good offline conversation. I'm just in there discussing. I'm like, I should probably go live now.
Yeah, we probably should. I agree.
Well, what's going on, man? So we were actually just talking about, I know that you were giving me some updates on, obviously the current market and, some inventory stats, which are, a great starting point here. But most specifically, you were talking about the rental piece. And that's something actually, too, I'm quite interested in myself being a homeowner and kind of planning on here in the next, looks like probably year, buying something else myself and renting out my current property. But yeah, continue on what you were talking about, because those stats are pretty...
Well, I will just go ahead and track back, and that is the rent rates have really been kind of flat for a couple of years now.
Right.
Like on detached, as I was saying, the median for May was $2,250 a month.
Right.
Which was up 2.3% from the year before. But the year before was literally like 1.5% prior to the year 2023. So
right.
It really has only moved 3, 4, 5% in the last couple of years. And some of them has actually moved down. Inventory is up. Our supply is now it was high as in the 50s. Now it's in the mid 40s in terms of day supply.
Interesting.
It is interesting, but we're also starting to see, because of the rents not increasing substantially, owners not willing to put as much money into them as well to make it
right.
look pretty. So it's, and I think that kind of is reflective a little bit in the rent rate and the lack of growth within it as well. But we're going to see median prices look different after October.
Right.
The legislature just required a lot of times when you rent a house, you have the rent rate, and then maybe you got trash and sewer to be paid, and some property management companies have a resident benefit package, everything else. So it's like the rent's $2,000, but then it's $49 for trash and sewer, and then it's
right.
$15 for this and this. They're going to make landlords market the property at the prices, all inclusive of all of that, rather than have a disclosure on the side. So now the rent rate will go from $2,000 to $2,200 because there's maybe a water bill in there and everything else.
Right.
Bottom line is, you're not going to know what rent really is anymore, because
right.
not every rent's going to have the same all figures and fees included into it. But also, think about this: 2 years from now, legislature gets in there again. It's like, oh my God, rents jumped 10%. They really didn't, because all those things were pulled out of the rent before. Now it's reflective in that. So we're going to hear all this.
That's the problem with interpreting numbers. Yeah, when you're interpreting numbers and statistics and historical data, it's like you have to know everything that's included inside of that data for it to be accurate or to be representative of what you're looking for. And it's always a nightmare on our end too.
Right, but you're 100% right, because you hear the number, but so few people say, well, what's behind that number? How'd you get to that number? And that's where all the data and the facts and truth lie, or behind that number.
100%. Like the two biggest ones that you actually see in the mortgage space, actually the most often on the news, is the rising increase of foreclosure rates, and they don't specify that they're talking about commercial real estate and not residential real estate, which is extremely confusing to the average day consumer that is a homeowner or looking to become. I hate that one. That's my least favorite for sure. And there's others, when they're talking about foreclosure rates being at whatever historical highs, that's because, again, in COVID, we did not have foreclosures. You could not get foreclosed on essentially with mortgage forbearance during that particular time period. So when you go from 0 to 2%, right? Obviously, you're talking about a 200% increase. It's a dip,
Yeah. And that's what's crazy about it is like foreclosure rates have doubled. They've gone from 0.4 to 0.8. It's it's crazy. But you mentioned forbearance, and that's something that's started to rear its ugly head now.
Yeah.
where you're meeting with sellers. Sellers went through a forbearance program and didn't realize that their payoff is 100,000 more than what they initially thought.
Yeah.
And so now we got houses being thrown into foreclosure, into a short sale as a result of forbearance programs, and people not really understanding what the true end result was going to be about that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, you'll end up with a lot of these clients of ours, mortgage statements that we see anytime we're taking a look at refinances. A lot of them during the COVID timeframes, right? They have interest-bearing principal and non-interest-bearing principal because through that forbearance period, right? A lot of those are loans that were now that principal that's being deferred is being tacked onto the end of the loan or the last and whatever, of which when it comes time to refinance or sell the house, again, it's a non-interest bearing principal, but it still has to be paid back. It's not free money. Although, to be perfectly honest with you, that's another thing too. When people talk to me about the next housing crash or crisis, I feel like that's the one thing that we really figured out and rolled out, deployed most effectively at the perfect right time. Because that would have been the next, you know what I mean? That would have been the next 2008 was COVID for sure.
Yeah.
And realistically, it was. But because of things like mortgage forbearance and other things like that, it really saved or propped up what would have been a disaster for sure.
Well, I think there was, tremendous lessons learned through the Great Recession and
100%.
from the lending side, and I think it's all happened. How people are dealing with it now is clearly for the better. I mean, it's what you can help people do is stay in their home and hopefully preserve some of their equity if they do need to get out of it, so on and so forth.
Right.
But the old stuff, this is the way we do it because we've always done it that way, is clearly evaporated. It's no longer there.
Right.
The mitigation part is very creative these days.
Right. Yeah. I mean, wielding the power of homeownership is something that, the more and more we go throughout time, I feel like it just gets stronger and stronger. The benefits become more and more prevalent. I was going to ask you, at the $2,250 average median rent, what does that rent somebody? Are we talking about like a 2,000 square foot house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or is that on average?
Well, that really depends.
Okay.
Honestly, but here's an interesting note. If you want to figure out what a $2,250 a month rent rate, what that equals in terms of a house value,
right
now it's just essentially double it.
Okay.
So that's about a $445,000 house.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever's inside that $445,000 house, it's 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, whatever it might be, you're probably looking at 1,800 square feet. That's what you're getting. But, $2,250 in Henderson and the Green Valley area or Summerlin is going to be, gosh dang, it's going to be, 1,400 square feet, where if you go to Sky Canyon or to North Las Vegas, it's going to be a way different thing. So it's, location plays a significant impact in that.
Right. Yeah. Another thing too with the utilities tied in. One of the things that I'd be interested on my house though, because I have solar that's paid for on my roof, so I have again a solar payment for my solar loan, whatever. That, let's say it's $300 a month or whatever the case may be. That tenant that I would instead have in the house when the home is rented essentially wouldn't have much of other than like a $20 NV energy bill every single month. That just makes the rental seem more attractive, or would you increase the price of the rent because of that?
Well,
or both, or whichever.
I mean, you're paying essentially the power.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we have a house in Silverado Ranch that has a solar array on its roof. We charge the tenant $190 a month.
Oh, so you do pass some of the cost along.
Power, yeah. We averaged it out, and it came about $190 a month. So that's what we do.
Interesting.
Yep, that's it's a. I understand everyone doing the solar thing.
Yeah.
It's causing a lot of problems in the resale market now.
Big time. And there's just not enough. Not to cut you off, I actually had a solar team come knock on my door the other day. Okay. And I don't know how much of this you remember, but when I very first met you, I don't know, almost 10 years ago now, I told you that I was coming from the solar industry. That's what I spent 2 or 3 years prior to coming back to the mortgage space for. So I just came equipped with much of this knowledge, right? So I had these 2 guys knock on my door yesterday to sell me solar. And like, I get it. The sales process is what it is. We all have to make a living. But when you start blatantly lying about things, I could not help myself but call him out on several things that unfortunately this guy tried to pitch me as. And then I inevitably told him that, hey, not only do I own a mortgage company here in town, but I also used to run one of the biggest regional sales teams for Tesla before I did. So I know for a fact that a lot of the stuff he was saying is bullshit. But a lot of that has to come with that first, where like the homeowner of the, when they put solar on their house, they were never told the right information. They weren't educated properly. And then that information continues, or negative information continues to pass along. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's, just in the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, we've had a deal cancel because
oh no,
investor couldn't buy.
Okay.
Due to the terms of the solar agreement.
Okay.
There was a $16,000 payment on another one that had to be paid by the seller because they got a discount or I can't remember, incentive fee, I think it was called.
Okay.
Solar on it. And they were transferring ownership way before that teaser rate ended. So they had to pay the remaining teaser rate.
Jesus.
16 grand is a lot.
That's a lot.
And then we had another one I managed, where the solar company put these panels on a roof that was 20 years old, didn't tell the owner to have his roof looked at.
Right.
And so now we have a roof leak. And we have to have panels removed so we can fix the roof.
Insane, man.
And then you got those companies go out of business. So who takes care of that stuff?
Honestly, that's the part for me that is the most dangerous. And, when I was with Solar City and Tesla before that, right, obviously the biggest company, the biggest whatever. So that alone made me more comfortable being in that industry, just knowing all of the different moving parts are at the very least being vetted out and being looked at properly. It's when, like, during that time in I think it was like 2015, 16, like the very end of 2016, there was a lot of legislation going on here in Nevada. We actually stopped servicing Nevada for one of those years that I was there. Because, different reasons, whatever, net metering with NV Energy, et cetera. And then once those floodgates opened and then they passed and allowed for a lot of this stuff to happen is when you started seeing a lot of these mom and pop shops opening up. And because there's such a humongous margin and cost for solar that's passed along to the customer, to the consumer, that is just financed in with these utility financing companies through like GoodLeap and things like that, where a lot of times more than half of your solar system is in finance charges, which is insane, and it's just crazy. But the finance piece alone is tough. But imagine that you put this, you make the payment, you pay the fees, you get to this, you got to that, and then 6 months from now something happens and the company no longer exists. You know what I mean? To me, that's the worst part. You know what I mean? It's the scariest. So that's when I put my solar system in my house, I did choose Sunrun personally. That's who I used. I had some very close friends over there. But being that they're like that top 3, publicly traded, at least insured, at least, you know what I mean? It makes it a little bit more comfortable. But there's still a lot of due diligence period people need to have with solar for sure.
I agree 100%. And our form for these Las Vegas realtors doesn't go far enough. So we built basically it's a disclosure / checklist for sellers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's do this, provide this to us. All the information for this. We have to have a copy of the contract, so on and so forth, because we don't want to be in this position again.
Right.
And we're having the seller sign these things saying, I did personally do all these things because I don't want to be blamed for this.
Right.
And the relationship isn't with the agent. Now, back in the day when you're doing short sales, the owner had to give the servicing company permission to speak to us to handle short sales. I mean, that's how it is with solar now too. They won't talk to us unless someone's given permission.
Exactly.
And then on the transfer side of it, when you're in escrow, because I got one right now, you got to stay on top of that with making sure that the buyer is doing what they need to do to handle the transfer and give whatever documentation that they're in. It's got to have, and if you're not on top of that, it's you can get to the end and big surprise.
It'll very, very much hold up the transaction. Because again, like you said, it has to be initiated by the seller. The seller then has to give access to the buyer. The buyer then has to fill out the application for credit and transfer it to the solar company. Then the solar company has to there's turn times for all of this stuff. And, as you know, obviously the partnership piece with like who you're working with and all that stuff to me is extremely important. And if you don't have open lines of communication, or your partner that you're working with isn't staying on top of this, or even knows that they have to stay on top of it, like you said, you might as well, you're flying blind at that point. You literally have no clue of what's going on. And that's not a good thing. You know what's another crazy one that I ran into last month was the irrigation, like whatever, with the backyards. Like when people decide they take the tax credit, remove the grass, get the whatever, the lawn, the artificial lawn, and then that next homeowner at the time of sale then assumes like they're not able to put in real grass either. It like passes to the new buyer.
Or a pool.
Yeah. Have you run into that?
So it does show up in the preliminary title report.
Right.
And so it's important for an agent to look at those and understand what they're looking at. First, I want to say probably half of the agents don't understand what really is in the prelim report. But that's a really critical thing to take a look at and understand what your buyer's dreams are for that backyard. And if there's one back there, then it costs the buyer money because they have to buy back the whatever credit was given,
right,
in order to have that. And in some cases, you may not be able to do it at all anymore with how restricted they're getting with pools. Man, I was playing golf on Dragon Ridge, and some of these pools for Father's Day, are like 500 and 600 square feet of surface area, and I'm sorry, twice that, 1,200 to 1,500 square feet surface area. Of course, now you can't build anything greater than things.
I was going to say, yeah,
isn't it? And it's like, wow, can you imagine these 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 square foot homes with this tiny little pool in the backyard that would look like the size of a spa when you scale it against the size of the house.
Right.
It was sad.
One of the things, honestly, when I'm considering new, what are we going to do for our next house? I grew up going to, being from Coronado, I had a bunch of friends of mine that lived in the fountains in Green Valley. And I mean, those pools, man, not only do some of the homes in the fountains, or a lot of them have basements, which is amazing, obviously, super fun. But those pools there, massive, man. Waterfalls, grottos, you name it, they've got it. So yeah, that'd be fun if you could assume that.
So yeah, so you gotta be careful with the NV Energy. Anybody where someone's got paid to do something, you have to be careful about that, because the incentives, you can't walk away with that stuff. Someone's gonna have to pay it back.
100%. Yeah, the solar guy that came to my house yesterday, he literally was trying to tell me that he got off the phone with Nevada Energy talking about and discussing my personal utility usage in my household, and they told him that my solar system was underperforming. I'm just like, dude, that's not that's not a thing.
I had the same guy call, or not that same guy, but
it could have been.
Guy called me. He's like, dude, this is in property management, you should get all your landlords to do this. And
sure, right? Why not?
Oh, really? I guess I'm so glad you called me, Dave, because I was just thinking the same thing. And he's like, really? Nope. But I was like, so tell me convince me why I should spend $45,000 to put solar on a home that I might keep 2 years.
Yeah, no, it's
and he couldn't. So and that's but a lot of people, that have good intentions, they think they're going to be in there a long time, but then stuff happens.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful. And Christina Chipman from Signature Real Estate had a great post on Facebook today about the pitfalls of solar. And,
right.
It just really hit home because we've had so many problems in just the last 30 days in our brokerage.
There's a lot. Yeah, I'm always constantly having conversations with my agents about solar, and making sure that when they're showing homes that they're keeping that solar piece top of mind, and then explaining to them again the differences. And so really there's like the three differences in the different types of solar financing. The one that does not affect the mortgage loans at all is the solar PPA. It's the oldest of the three. It's the one that really, in my solar day and age, that was what we truly sold the most often. It was just the transfer of, instead of you paying NV Energy for price per kilowatt hour X, you're paying price per kilowatt hour Y with Solar City or whoever your solar provider is. So that's transferable, right? And then because there's no static monthly payment for it, right, that cost does not factor into the buyers, which I know that's the major pain point I feel like for a lot of homeowners is I just can't buy this house. I can't qualify, especially with higher rates in general on the mortgage side. I just can't qualify for the solar payment. So that sucks. And that's the PPA. The solar lease is that's another old school, right? 30 or 20 years solar lease. At the end of 20 years, you decide what to do with the system, blah, blah, blah. But that static payment does factor into the DTI ratios, which a lot of times it hurts people, you know what I mean? Or it can hurt people.
Yeah.
Still a lot of advantage to it. I mean, depending on how old it is, like if you have a solar lease that was from like 5 to 10 years ago, you're likely going to be paying sub 10 cents a kilowatt hour, where I think right now with NV Energy, it's like 17 cents a kilowatt hour or something like that. So could be big savings, but obviously more conversation. And the one that's the most popular is just the solar purchase right now, where I'm the one that captured all the benefit when I bought my solar system. I've got the tax credit. I got all the benefit from it already. If I pass it on to someone else, other than that like net metering agreement for buying back the solar energy, you're not getting much else, you know what I mean, from it. So, yeah, interesting. One thing that you said about the prelim. So I had a client of mine, okay, that was at a signing the other day with myself. So both my buyer clients and then my agent. My agent at the signing, she kept using terms and vernacular that were industry specific to us that our buyer had no clue about. And this particular buyer he's a very like intuitive type of, he wants to know everything type person. So her doing stuff like she just used the word prelim, you know what I mean? Oh, it's on the prelim, whatever. And I was like, okay, 1 second, take a second. Here's exactly what a prelim is. This is why it is. And this is what specifically we're talking about on the prelim, because that honestly threw him for a loop for that just quick few minutes where we're speaking language that he wasn't familiar with, especially at a sensitive time like that. I needed to walk that back a little bit and make sure he understood it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Do you try to speak the language of your client as much as possible, or do you bring them into your world, or what do you prefer?
My preference is to speak in the language that they understand.
Right.
Because that's the only way I know they're really going to grasp what it is.
Right.
You know, and they don't do it on a daily basis. So by whatever I try to help them understand our vernacular,
right.
Next time they sell a house 10 to 12 years ago, it's going to be gone. So,
right.
I tell everybody, reduce your communication to like if it's a 4th or 5th grade level.
Yep.
And stop to make sure that people understand what you're talking about. Just don't make those assumptions, because you're right. A lot of times people are asking, what is this report? What does that mean? So it's real simple, for us to understand, those who have been in business for a while. But for those that don't do this on a regular basis, it's concerning, especially when you get through, in ours, mineral rights and perpetual navigation and aviation and all these things are like, I never gave them any permission.
Right.
I understand, but that was default to your house. I said, what's crazy is all those things go in there before the mortgage even goes in there. So even your lending company is subject to that.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I do like to, through all my conversations with my clients from the very, very beginning, I like to give them a sneak peek and, again, educate them on some fun stuff, that, again, because I'm kind of a crazy finance guy, I find fun. And some of the time, like, take it extra slow, because sometimes you see their eyes glaze over, which happens. But I like to give them a bit of that on my end to make them a part of the experience. But at the same time, I have to make it as super simple, digestible, and understandable as possible for them to actually get it. That's the part, especially in finance. It's like I have to connect those, light bulbs inside to make it, to get anything moving forward. So,
I think if you can remove the anxiety, the stress, do so. Like today. We put 2 homes on the market last night, and
that's nice.
My day one thing is I send them out a copy of the purchase agreement.
Yeah.
That we will anticipate seeing shortly, and with all the customary costs associated with it, and my notes on it. It's an evergreen thing, It's a video with the actual purchase agreement, but we send that out so when we get an offer, we don't have to ask a bunch of little questions. We have already tackled that. And they feel confident, that they know where to look for the right stuff. Same with prelims. We go under escrow with someone. I have a video that I just did a Zoom capture on a prelim, sent it to them, and said, "This is what this stuff is going to look like when yours comes, just so you know." And we'll know what odd things are based on things that don't look like this one. It's just there's so many cool tools. I mean,
there's no excuse because we have all the.
Yeah, you're right. It's how we were forced to change the way we do business because of COVID. Has some really lasting, cool attributes and factors about it. It's so cool, actually.
Yeah, I've adopted now since COVID. It's been now 5 years. To be honest with you, this is something from the solar industry they had adopted, and I didn't immediately when I came back or when I came to the mortgage space. I didn't adopt immediately. For me, it's a non-negotiable now. We're either meeting in person or I'm meeting you on Zoom. The first time it's a non-negotiable, unless it's a client that absolutely has an emergency or that this realtor is really, 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 really putting their absolute trust in. There's not enough reasons for me to break that non-negotiable. It's like it's Zoom or it's in person. Which one is it? Because there's so much on that first 30-minute conversation, whether it's face-to-face or on Zoom. Like you said, there's so many different things that we're going to go over together. And again, I'm going to share with you, educate you on, set expectations for that. You just cannot do it over the phone, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Yeah. And you got a great head of hair. There's no reason to get on Zoom for this.
Right.
That forced Zoom because of COVID turned out to be fantastic because that's how we present offers too. I don't need to go to someone's house to do that. We get on Zoom. Matter of fact, I go over the offer. This is what I really love about Zoom now.
Right.
I screen record going over the offer. I talk about their specific offer. This is here. This is here. This is here. This is here. I send a link with markup on the offer to them. We get on the phone or we get on a Zoom and then we go over it and then we respond. So we don't have to, I guess I weave into their a lot easier as a result of that.
Oh, 100%.
And I love that part, because I've been in business since 92. We always did stuff at the table.
Yeah.
But, today's way we do business is the velocity of moving things back and forth is so much faster than it was back in the 90s. And this allows you to keep things moving quickly, but also allow people to kind of get an understanding and a grasp of what's going on their time, not on my time.
Yeah. And a lot of what you're doing and going the extra mile and doing all this stuff is a big trust builder. You know what I mean? And I feel like in any market, especially a tough one, having trust and unbreakable trust with somebody because of the value you're bringing and what you're demonstrating to them on a daily basis is incredibly important. You know what I mean? One of the things too, and hopefully, I don't know if you plan on coming Tuesday to that relationship-based sales mastermind that we're having, part 2. Hopefully we see you there. But that's, some of the stuff that we're discussing in there and we're role-playing and we're going over is things like, okay, why do I require a group text with all parties? Okay. It's not obviously, clearly someone could call me and say, hey man, I got this client's number, or I told them to call you. Okay, great. One of the reasons, again, that's kind of like a non-negotiable with me with my partners is I want to get the group text going because I have a very specific canned reply to it because I want to get the buy-in from the client, right? Like sometimes I have my realtor, he'll put me in the group text and then he'll give me the client's email address as well. And I get it. That's phenomenal. Regardless, I'm going to send the email. We're going to get on board. But I'm doing it for a very specific reason because I want that person to respond and give me their buy-in. You know what I mean? It's kind of like pulling them a little bit here, there, and then it makes things a little bit easier, right, as you go through the sales process. So,
I totally get what you're saying. The whole process is theater.
100%.
It really is. So and there is a reason why you do what you do to build on each step, and part of it is really theater. It's and like you use the word experience, and that's exactly what it is. Our whole life is full of experience.
100%.
And if we don't deliver an experience that our customers are going through themselves with other companies, like Amazon and FedEx and Chick-fil-A and all that stuff, if we don't match up to that in their working with us or their experience with us, we're falling short, and they'll go through themselves.
And that's one thing I mean, I've always experienced, or since coming back to the mortgage space, you just experience all of the time anyways, until I'll tell you the pivot in just a sec. But maybe you guys have also experienced this more since, stuff with NAR or whatever, but value. How am I different? What am I doing differently? How am I educating differently? How am I, so on. All of those things are part of that client experience, right? Whether it works out, it doesn't, it doesn't. That's a whole nother piece of the puzzle. That's something else that is more expertise on that side. But it's like the value adds and like truly like what are you bringing to the table for these people, right? That's different because again, it's so easy in my world for somebody to think that they're going to get, right? I'm going to go on rocketmortgage.com, get my pre-approval. I'm all set, good to go. And then who knows what happens right at that point. But what stops someone from doing that versus using me? You know what I mean? Like I think about that. And I'm always trying to add to that, refine to that, bring more value in addition to the obvious stuff, right? Apart from this,
No, but you're right. And those, there's always going to be a part of our society that's transactional.
Yep.
But I appreciate the relational a lot. I go to the restaurants I go to. It's nice to go in and have people remember who you are and just take the time to have conversations with you and from time to time just slip here's an extra this and that, and it feels good. We live in a society that even though we're connected socially, a lot of people are alone. And when you have that warm, fuzzy feeling because of whatever you may have done, it just builds a connectivity. And the need for, I don't want to say this, just the need to know the value aspect of that is through the experience, and the relationship and the trust and the value is all built into one. I have my youngest who goes to Arizona State. He's here this summer, and he's here working for me on my social and marketing side. And I gave him a task to build basically a flow, if you will, that for just listed and new price and just sold and all the stuff. And he comes in with this little piece of paper, and I said, "Gosh dang!" I said, "That's not a whole lot of thought behind that." I said, in fact, it doesn't even convey a whole lot of trust that this will convey into something that provides value to me.
Right.
And I said, sometimes, Brian, even though you know what you're doing and your customer doesn't,
right?
It's important to show the steps and that you've taken the time to think about this and that you were transparent here and so on and so forth. I said, come back with 20 pages covering the same thing and I'll feel good about it.
Yeah.
So it's the value is important.
Yeah.
With our settlement, there will be it hasn't happened yet, but there will be a big shakedown and a tremendous difference in services and compensation in the years to come.
Right.
Right now, Mario, everyone's getting paid more.
Yep.
But it's not going to be the case.
Right.
And matter of fact, NAR is talking about a 10 to 15% drop in membership for 2026. If that happens, probably should have happened. When 70% of agents didn't have one listing sell last year, that's crazy.
That's an insane number.
It is. And quite honestly, the member of the public deserves to work with someone that knows how to navigate this stuff, that's been through the process.
Do you tell people that sometimes, like when maybe let's say you're interviewing someone or you're trying to earn someone's business, do you ever bring that point up where how many transactions or how much experience this person has? It really, really matters. Do you ever?
It does, experience and credibility.
Right.
It really play a factor in, for me, gosh dang, 33 years.
Right.
And then being the broker of the office where, we've probably been involved in 20,000 real estate transactions.
Right.
So that should have some bearing and actually have some weight in why I should be paid a little bit more than somebody else.
Sure.
But I'm going to tell you that a lot of people, that doesn't matter to them as much as just that relationship part. how you make them feel and whether they can trust you, and then trust you that you're not an idiot, excuse my language, but to try to fake it till you make it, that if you don't know something, you know where the answer, so you can be the best rep to that buyer or seller possible.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, a lot of it comes with how many, swings at the plate you've had, you know what I mean? Again, with time, with experience, with knowledge, with et cetera. That's one thing with my clients that that's like one of my biggest value adds is, I provide certainty. You know what I mean? I'm giving you certainty, day one certainty, right? We're not guessing. I'm not, hoping. I'm delivering certainty with transparency and education and the whole nine yards. One thing I've always been a big believer in is like, yes, I'm a nice guy. Maybe you could say I'm a nice guy, whatever, but I much prefer to be a good guy versus a nice guy. You know what I mean? I really want to go deeper, more, you know what I mean? Like versus being very surface level with it and just being a nice guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like that. Actually, I like that a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, those systems and processes are super important. We all have our own, that's one of the reasons I wanted to start teaching that class kind of on a regular, is like sharing my systems and processes and talking about the sales stuff, the conversation stuff, the relationship building stuff, especially from the lens of a mortgage lender or a mortgage partner. It's really fun, man. I hope you're able to make it next Tuesday. It's a good time because again, it's not a class I'm teaching. It's a mastermind where we're all like together. Last time we had eight of my real estate partners. We're like kind of sitting there and collabing. You know what I mean? Like I have an outline of everything. These are the topics I wanted to talk about, or we can talk about. Everyone can kind of pick and choose of what we dig into and just go from there, and because of that reason, it's always like we can talk about either stuff that's going on right now or stuff that, you've been struggling with for the last 5 years. You know what I mean? So it's really fun.
In most cases, I would do something like that, Mario. I just don't know what my Tuesdays looks like.
Oh, yeah. No, you're good.
I'd leave on Wednesday for vacation.
I'm a little jealous. I'm not going to lie. They should be hopefully happening in perpetuity. It's just another value add to my agent partners. So what?
Good. I'm sure you'll cover all this stuff, but gosh dang, I think the best success that you have in a relationship is we gamify this in our team on both the property management side as well as the sales side. And that is never let the phone ring and have someone ask a question on the other side. Beat them to the punch every single time. That's fantastic. And the other is especially on the sales side, what happens next, and that is not having to have the seller say, well, what's next, or the buyer that we've already in our system, email, in a video, or something like that to that effect, saying, okay, now that we just did this, here's what's going to happen in the next couple of days. Here's what's going to happen in the next couple of days, and that's been a lot of fun because gosh dang, I just got bought some stuff from a retailer, this morning. It was, hey, it's out for delivery. And Harris just said, it's been dropped off. I didn't have to wonder and ask. It's
right.
I get notified all the time. That's our society. That's how we need to be with the people that we serve.
100%. Yeah. The first meeting we actually had a big chunk of it where we were talking about that exactly, what I call pre-buttling. Right. And I was trying to.
I love that word. Yeah.
Yeah. The good old pre-buttle. But, explaining to some of and I don't know why there's a very big disparity in the different type of sales experience you get. I feel like from the real estate side, from realtors, where it's like either some have been in it for a long time and they're comfortable with the sales experience, or they're not salespeople. And I'm just like, no, that's not, we're all salespeople to some degree, especially in our industry specifically. But what does the word sales mean to you? That's like defining that, understanding that, whatever. That's a whole nother thing. But we were talking about, I am a person that I am going to bring the objections up before you do. I'm going to talk about, dang, interest rates are high right now. This is the solutions that we're rolling out for all of our clients, including this, et cetera, et cetera. But getting ahead of it, objection handling, pre-buttling. Yeah, we got deep into that stuff. It was fun. So, which we'll continue to do because, again, as you know, it's a muscle you have to, use often for it to work.
Yep, I agree.
But sweet. Okay. Well, this is we could be on here another 2 hours, partner, talking about this stuff. It's already been 45 minutes. I know that we have one of our clients waiting for us as well that wants to hop on Zoom and chat about his weekend shopping experience, hopefully. Anything else you want to leave us with, or anything else your Jedi sage mind can share with us?
No, everyone knows the market just requires a high level of professionalism today, and to rely on data, not just on your back up everything you have to say with data. Is really,
Yeah.
Before we were talking about price reductions and helping sellers understand the true nature of what's going on in our market today. And today we have these tremendous tools we didn't have years ago that have been data transitioned into easy visuals to tell the story. Use it as much as you possibly can.
Yeah. I would also, if possible, all of our real estate partners out there, one of the things I've noticed a lot, and I feel like one of the ways they want to try to get around some objections is by sharing a solution that might not be possible, right? Because once you say something, you cannot put that back in, you know what I mean? Your client's already heard it. Now, if that doesn't come to fruition, you've got a problem. So I feel like also being super tactical with what you're sharing with your client or what expectations you're setting with your client, especially in those conversations when you're talking about like strategy, buying strategy, refinance strategy, whatever, right now is very, very important too. So also my prediction, second half of the year. If you thought the first half of the year was tough, I think second half is going to be much smoother sailing. What are your thoughts?
I've learned a long time ago that I suck at predicting.
Wonderful.
I just
we all do. Let's be honest.
Take in the information and just react to it necessarily. Reposition as you need to.
See, that's why every retail investor on Wall Street sells at the absolute tippy top lows and buys at the absolute tippy top highs, because no one's good at predicting. No one really knows. But yeah, I'm hoping for a very positive outlook. It should be fun. We'll see what happens. But regardless, that's one of the reasons I continue. Sometimes people are like, man, why are you sharing all these closing? I'm like, because I'm trying to remind our community and our clients and our sphere of influence that people are still buying and selling real estate, right? For the right reasons. It's not market specific. You know what I mean? It's people will always have to buy and sell real estate or refinance and consolidate debt or whatever the case may be. So I'm a big believer in sharing those wins. Keep up the good work.
Amen. I agree.
All right, buddy. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your upcoming trip. I'm going to text our client here in just a sec to see if he's ready to hop on Zoom. Anything for us?